Hey guys, we're back to reading Dealing with Dragons. We're on chapter 14, in which the wizards try to make trouble and Cimarine does something about it. The door of the cottage opened and Morwen stepped out. What sort of emergency? She asked, and studied Alienora and the Stone Prince for a moment, and then peered at Cimarine over the tops of her glasses, and added with some severity, I hope you weren't referencing his predicament. He may well find it an inconvenience, but it certainly isn't an emergency, not by my standards anyway. No, said Cimarine, I was talking about the wizards. They've poisoned the King of Dragons, and now they're trying to interfere with Colin's stone so that Warag will be the new king. We have to stop them, but we don't know where they are, and Warag's is going to try and carry the stone any minute. Can you find them for us? Morwen blinked twice, and shoved her glasses back into place with her forefinger. I see, she said. You're right, that is an emergency. I'll do what I can, but if you don't tell me the whole story later, when there's a bit more time, I shall turn you into mice and give you to my cats. Wait here. As she spoke, Morwen disappeared into the house, and she reappeared a moment later, holding a small mirror and muttering over it. Colin's stone, she said, and breathed onto the glass. She looked up. Any wizard in particular? Zeminar, the head wizard of the Society of Wizards, Cimarine said, wishing that Morwen would go faster, but knowing she couldn't. I should have guessed, Morwen said. She turned back to the mirror. Zeminar, she said, and breathed onto the glass once more. Then she motioned to Cimarine to come and look. Cimarine obeyed, and Alienora and the Stone Prince crowded closely behind her. The mirror showed a blurry, wavering picture of the Ford of Whispering Snakes. As Cimarine watched, the picture moved slowly along one bank of the river, past the waiting dragons, the immense trees of the enchanted forest, and down onto the next river. Can't it go any faster? Alienora whispered. There's no need to whisper, and no, it can't, Morwen said. Not if you want to be sure of finding these wizards on your own the first try, and it doesn't sound as if you have time to waste on mistakes. The picture in the mirror continued to creep along the bank, and Cimarine pulled the third and last feather out of her pocket, and brushed it nervously across her fingers while she waited. What's that? The Stone Prince said suddenly. The mirror picture stopped, and then moved away from the bank, away from the river, toward a thicket of blackberry brambles. Cimarine saw the tip of a wooden staff poking above the thicket. Tensely she waited for the mirror to show them the far side of the brambles. It's them, Alienora said, sounding excited and frightened at the same time. Oh dear! Cimarine took a good look at the picture in the mirror. 5 wizards were standing in an opening behind the blackberry thicket, leaning on their staffs and looking up at the sky. Suddenly one of the wizards pointed, and the other wizards peered up and nodded, raising their staffs. Get the buckets, Cimarine said, and cats scattered in all directions as the Stone Prince pounded across the porch behind Cimarine and Alienora. Hang on, here we go. I wish— Not without me, you don't, Morwen said, grabbing Cimarine's shoulder. We were at the blackberry thicket where the wizards are, Cimarine finished and dropped the feather. Morwen finished as the porch winked out and was replaced by blackberries. The wizards were standing in an open arc just in front of the bramble. Each of them held his staff so that the lower end was about a foot above the ground, pointing at something hidden in the moss at their feet. An unpleasant yellow-green light dripped from the ends of their staffs, and the moss where the wizards were standing was brown and dead. The wizards' backs were towards Cimarine and her friends. Now! Cimarine cried. As the wizards began to turn, she set one of her buckets on the ground and lifted the other with both hands. Taking careful aim, she flung the soapy water over the black-haired wizard in the center of the arc. Charge! Yelled the Stone Prince, and threw one of his buckets at the nearest wizards. Take that, you cheats! Alienora said, dumping the first of her buckets over another. What? This is impossible, one of the wizards said indignantly as he began to melt. Too bad, Cimarine said, throwing her second load of water to the next to last wizard. Watch where you're throwing that, Morwen said to the Stone Prince, who had sloshed his second bucket over the 5th wizard with such enthusiasm that the water had sprayed in all directions. Sorry, the prince apologized. Is that all of them? It's all 5 that we saw, Cimarine said cautiously. Then we did it, Alienora said. Not quite, said Zeminar, stepping out of the bushes behind Morwen. You've interrupted the spell, of course, but we were nearly finished anyways. As long as the stone remains enchanted, Warog won't have any trouble getting it all the way to the Vanishing Mountain. Look, he pointed his staff, and Cimarine saw 3 dragons flying in the air, steadily towards the mountains. One of them had a long black stone clutched in his claws, and the other two appeared to be escorting him at a careful distance. "Warag and the two judges," Simmarine murmured. Zeminar nodded. "You might as well put that bucket down," he went on, turning to Alienora. "You can't throw it at me without melting your witch friend here. What's in it, by the way?" "I don't see why we should tell you," Simmarine said, as Alienora set the last of the 6 buckets down. "Because I'm interested, Princess," Zeminar said with an oily smile. "It will pass the time until the next shift gets here. I can decide what to do with you then." "If you're interested, why don't you take a closer look?" the Stone Prince said, picking up Alienora's bucket. "Stay where you are," Zeminar commanded, and as he spoke he raised his staff and sidestepped so that Morwen was between him and the Stone Prince. "If you insist," the prince said. He shrugged and lifted the bucket, and flung the water over Morwen and Zeminar at the same time. "What? No!" Zeminar cried in horror and began to melt. "Not soap suds! It's so demeaning!" "There's a little lemon juice in it, too," Alienora offered. Zeminar glared at her. He was less than half his normal height and shrinking as they watched, and while a dark puddle spread out beneath him. "Lemon juice! Bah! How dare you do such a thing? I'm the head wizard of the Wizard Society!" His voice grew fainter and higher as he shrank. Interfering busybodies, soap suds, of all the undignified tricks! You'll be sorry for this! You can't melt a wizard forever, you know! You'll be sorry!" The wizard's voice ceased, and all that remained of him was a dark pile of silk robes and a long wooden staff lying on some damp moss. Alienora and Simmarine stared for a moment, and then Alienora turned to the Stone Prince. "I'm glad he's gone," she said, "but how could you melt Morwen just to get the wizard?" "But I didn't," the Stone Prince said. "Look." Simmarine and Alienora turned, and Morwen seemed no shorter than usual, though she certainly looked damp. She had taken off her glasses and was shaking water off of them. "Don't just stand there," she said crossly to Simmarine. "Fetch me a dry handkerchief." "Just a minute," Simmarine said, checking her pockets, and she found the handkerchief that had been wrapped around the magic feathers, and handed it to Morwen. Why didn't you melt?" "Clean living," Morwen said as she began to dry her glasses on Simmarine's handkerchief. "I thought as much," the Stone Prince said in a satisfied tone. "Nobody who lives in a house as clean as yours could possibly melt in a bucket of soap suds." "Quite right," Morwen said approvingly. "You have a good head on your shoulders, young man. What's this?" She held up a sharp-edged black pebble. "It's a piece of stone I found from the Caves of Fire and Night," Simmarine said. "Where exactly?" "The King's Cave," Simmarine said. "Morwen, shouldn't we do something about that spell Zeminar mentioned?" Alienora was watching the sky, shading her eyes with her hands. "Warag's nearly halfway to the mountain," she said anxiously. "Good," said Morwen, though neither Simmarine nor Alienora could tell which of them she was talking to. The witch looked at her wet robes and walked across the patch of dead moss where the wizards had been working and picked her way carefully past a little pile of robes and staffs. Simmarine followed, and in the center of the brown area was a black stone the size of Simmarine's fist, and a web of yellow-green light flickered across its smooth surface. "Sloppy," said Morwen. "Very sloppy. Though I'm not surprised. The wizards have always seemed to depend on brute force when a little subtlety would be far more effective." She fingered Simmarine's pebble for a moment, then reached out and dropped it on top of the wizard's stone. There was a noise like a great deal of popcorn, all popping at once, and light flickered over the black stone and spat yellow-green sparks in all directions. Alienora jumped and backed away. Simmarine would have liked to do the same, but she did not want to give Morwen a bad impression of her courage, so she stayed where she was. The sparks died and the flickering light went out, and from the sky high above came a faint shriek of surprise and rage. Simmarine looked and saw 3 black specks in the sky. No, not 3, 4. And the 2 escort dragons were swooping to catch the speck that was Colin's stone, which Warag had just dropped. Simmarine gave a sigh of relief and looked at Morwen. "So much for Warag and the wizard," she said. "And we didn't even need the fireproofing spell. What did you do?" "And what happens now?" Alienora added. "Duck," said Morwen, and she threw herself sideways into the bushes. What? The Stone Prince said. Then he and Cimarine and Alienora were all engulfed in a blast of dragon fire. The Stone Prince leaped in front of the two princesses, but he was much too late to protect them. Fortunately, the fireproofing spell was still intact, and neither of them even felt warm, though Alienora lost the ends of her sleeves, and Cimarine's hemline rose 6 score inches. I knew I should have said this fire. I knew I shouldn't have said that about the fireproofing spell, Cimarine muttered. With a wordless snarl and a thunder of wings, Warag landed just in front of the little group. You, he shouted when he saw Cimarine. I might have known it would have been you. A flame shot from his mouth once more, and it was just as useless as it had been the first time. Cimarine glanced up and saw one of the escort dragons spiraling down to see what was going on. You might as well give up, Warag, she said, hoping to distract the angry dragon long enough for help to arrive. You can't be king of the dragons now. I'll tear you limb from limb, Warag raged. Every last one of you. One arm shot out as he spoke, and shining silver claws snapped around the stone prince's waist. Alienora screamed. Hurry up! Cimarine shouted at the dragon in the sky. The dragon heard and dove towards them, but he was not fast enough. Warag shoved the stone prince into his mouth and bit down hard. An instant later he howled in pain and spat out the prince and 4 teeth. What's all this? The escort dragon said, landing carefully beside Warag. The clearing was getting rather crowded. A plot to cheat on the test to see who the next king of dragons will be, Cimarine said. Warag was in it, and a lot of wizards. Are you all right? Alienora asked the stone prince, who was picking himself up. His stone was black in places from dragon's fire, but otherwise he seemed unhurt. More or less, the stone prince said. But look what the fire did to my clothes. And that dragon put a chip in my sleeve. What am I supposed to do about that? It's not as if I can change clothes when I get home, you know. That's ridiculous, the escort dragon told Cimarine. No dragon would cooperate with wizards, and I don't see any wizards either. I think you're making it up. Of course you don't see any wizards, Cimarine said, feeling very cross. We melted them. Melted them? Where do you think those staffs came from? Cimarine pointed at the wizard's staffs lying across the scattered brown puddles. The dragon backed up a pace and sniffed experimentally. It's all quite true, Morwen said, poking her head out of the bushes, and we'll be more than happy to explain the whole thing to your new king as soon as you have one, provided, of course, that you take this maniac away before he burns down the entire enchanted forest. She gestured at Warog. Cimarine, I really must insist on getting a copy of that fireproofing spell. It will clearly be worth every minute of months hunting to find me some hen's teeth, and I may as well get started as soon as I can. Who's that? Said the escort dragon. Morwen? That does it. This is too much for me. I'm taking you all into custody until the trials are over and the king can sort it out. Come along. I assume that doesn't apply to me, Warag rumbled. He winced when he spoke. It certainly does, the escort dragon said. I said all, and I meant all. If I meant all the humans, I would have said all the humans. Or maybe some of you, or you over there, or all you non-dragons, or— Nonsense, Warag interrupted. Don't you know who I am? You're the dragon who caused a ruckus just now, for no reason I can see, the escort dragon replied, and it's my duty and my job to take you into custody. When the trials are over, you can explain it to the king, and if you've done something wrong, well, I'll take what I have coming. And if I've done something wrong, well, I'll take what I have coming. And if I haven't, you'll take yours. And, all right, Warag said, but I warn you, you'll regret this. That's as may be, the dragon escort said with dignity. Right now, though, you're in custody along with the rest of these people, and you'd better not go snacking on any of them until things get sorted out. I saw what you did to the gray one. Did you? The stone prince said. Then what are you going to do about this chip in my sleeve? Tell it to the king, the escort dragon advised. Now off we go, the lot of you. Morwen came cautiously out of the bushes, brushing leaves off of her already wet black robes. She stopped and peered at the escort dragon over the tops of her glasses. This has not been a good day for anyone's clothes, she said severely. I shall send the cleaning bill to your king. Whatever you want, the escort dragon said impatiently. Come on. Scowling furiously, Warag marched off into the forest. The Stone Prince and Alianora followed, talking in low voices. Morwen paused to pick up the wizard's black rock and Cimorine's pebble and then went on after them. Cimorine hesitated. "Go on," the escort dragon said. "I will, but I think you ought to know. Another batch of wizards is supposed to show up. Zeminar said something about the second shift. I don't know what they can do without the stone they were using, but I'm sure they'll try something." "Wizards always do," the escort dragon said with a sigh. He studied the wizard's staffs that were lying on the ground. "All right, I'll send someone back to keep an eye on things as soon as we get to the ford. Whatever's going on here, there are certainly wizards in it, and that's enough for me." "Good," said Cimorine, "and thank you." She smiled at the startled expression on the dragon's face and started out after the others. That is the end of chapter 14. Next time we'll pick up with the last chapter, chapter 15, in which the dragons crown a king and Cimorine gets a new job. I'll see you guys next time. Until then, stay happy and stay safe. Goodbye.